Commander Velkoth stood on the bridge of the Bloodclaw, his 7-foot frame casting a long shadow across the metal floor. His yellow eyes glowed in the dim red lighting as he watched the scanner display. 3 razor-sharp claws tapped against his command chair as he studied the readings. "Commander, we have detected an unknown vessel," reported his sensor officer. The smaller Valkyrie's voice carried the usual mix of fear and respect that all crew members showed their superior. Velkoth's lips pulled back to reveal rows of sharp teeth. "Show me." The main screen flickered to life, displaying a small ship drifting through space. It looked primitive to Velkoth's trained eye. The hull was made of basic metal alloys and the engine signatures were weak compared to Valkyrie technology. "Have they seen us?" Velkoth asked. "No, Commander. They appear to be conducting some kind of survey of the asteroid field." Velkoth laughed, a deep rumbling sound that made several crew members step back. In his 40 years of service, he had never encountered a species that could challenge Valkyrie supremacy. The galaxy was full of weak creatures who scattered like frightened animals when the Bloodclaw appeared. "Open a channel," he ordered. The communications officer's claws danced over his console. "Channel open, Commander." "Unknown vessel, this is Commander Velkoth of the Valkyrie Imperial Fleet. You have entered Valkyrie space without permission. Surrender immediately or be destroyed." For several moments there was only silence. Then a voice responded in heavily accented Galactic Standard. "This is Captain Kim Tae-yun of the Terran Federation vessel New Sol. We were not aware this system was claimed. We mean no harm and request permission to complete our scientific survey." Velkoth's eyes narrowed. Terran Federation. He had never heard of such a government. More importantly, this Captain Kim had not immediately surrendered as all intelligent species did when faced with Valkyrie might. "You dare to make requests of the Valkyrie Empire?" Velkoth snarled into the communicator. "There will be no negotiations. Prepare to be boarded." "Captain Kim to Valkyrie vessel," the voice replied calmly. "We prefer diplomatic solutions to conflicts. Perhaps we could arrange a peaceful meeting." Several Valkyrie warriors on the bridge began laughing. The sound was like grinding metal mixed with animal growls. Velkoth raised a clawed hand for silence. "Diplomatic solutions," he repeated mockingly. "How amusing. You clearly do not understand who you are dealing with, little creature." Through the view screen, Velkoth could see the alien ship more clearly now. It was roughly half the size of the Bloodclaw, with a design that seemed focused on function rather than intimidation. Unlike Valkyrie vessels, which were built to look like massive predators, this ship appeared almost civilian in nature. "Boarding party, prepare for immediate departure," Velkoth commanded. "I want our new guests to understand Valkyrie superiority firsthand." Lieutenant Gorvek stepped forward, his scarred hide telling the story of countless battles. "How many warriors, Commander?" 12 should be sufficient, Velkoth replied. "These creatures appear soft and weak. Consider this a training exercise for the younger warriors." Gorvex bowed his head. "It will be done, Commander." As the boarding party prepared their weapons and armor, Velkoth studied the alien vessel through the scanner. The ship's occupants were moving about inside, but they did not appear to be panicking. Most species would be frantically trying to escape or sending desperate surrender messages by now. "Commander," the sensor officer called out. "I am detecting unusual energy readings from their ship. Weapons?" "Unknown, sir. The signatures do not match any known weapon systems." Velkoth dismissed the concern with a wave of his claws. Primitive technology often produces strange readings. Focus on tracking their crew movements. The boarding shuttle launched from the Bloodclaw's belly, carrying its cargo of elite Valkyrie warriors toward the alien ship. Each warrior stood over 6 feet tall, with muscles that could crush metal and reflexes faster than most species could even see. Their natural weapons had been enhanced with synthetic claws and reinforced bone structure. "Shuttle has docked successfully," reported the communications officer. "Boarding party is entering the target vessel." Velkoth settled back in his command chair to watch what he expected would be a very brief and one-sided encounter. The view screen split to show feeds from the warriors. Helmet cameras, the interior of the alien ship was surprisingly well lit and clean. The corridors were wider than necessary for the small creatures they had seen on the scanner, and the walls were covered with strange symbols and displays. "I count 6 targets visible on motion sensors," Gorvex reported through the communication link. "They appear to be taking defensive positions in the main corridor." "Only 6? Velkov laughed. "They must be expecting reinforcements that will never come." Through the camera feeds, Velkov got his first clear look at the aliens called humans. They were even smaller than the scanner had indicated, standing only about 5.5 feet tall on average. Their skin was pale and soft-looking, with no visible natural weapons. They wore matching blue uniforms and carried what appeared to be basic projectile weapons. "Pitiful," muttered one of the bridge crew. "They look like prey animals." The lead human stepped forward as the Valkyrie boarding party rounded the corner. He appeared older than the others, with short gray hair and calm brown eyes. When he spoke, his voice was steady and controlled. "I am Chief Security Officer Park Minho. You are trespassing on a peaceful Federation vessel. Withdraw immediately, or we will be forced to defend ourselves." The Valkyrie warriors burst into laughter at this threat. Gorvex activated his external speakers so the humans could hear their amusement. "You will defend yourselves?" Gorvex asked in broken galactic standard. "With what?" "Those primitive weapons?" Park Minho's expression did not change. "This is your final warning." "Our final warning?" Gorvex raised his claws and flexed his muscles. "Little creature, do you see these weapons? They have torn through the hulls of starships. Your soft flesh will offer no resistance whatsoever." The other Valkyrie warriors spread out in the corridor, each one eager to demonstrate their individual superiority. This was the traditional Valkyrie way of combat, each warrior seeking personal glory through displays of strength and skill. "Very well," Park Minho said quietly. He turned to his team and spoke in what Velkov assumed was their native language. The words were short and precise. What happened next would be discussed in Valkyrie military academies for generations to come. Though most would refuse to believe the reports. Park Minho raised his weapon and fired. The sound was unlike anything the Valkyrie had ever heard in combat, not the hum of energy weapons or the clash of metal on metal, but a sharp crack followed by the wet sound of metal projectiles tearing through flesh and bone. Lieutenant Gorvex, the pride of the Valkyrie boarding corps, fell backward with a hole through his chest before he could even begin his traditional battle charge. The corridor erupted in chaos as the remaining humans opened fire with coordinated precision that the Valkyrie had never encountered before. The remaining 11 Valkyrie warriors stared at Lieutenant Gorvex's body in complete shock. Their leader, their strongest fighter, was dead in less than a second. The hole in his chest was perfectly round and clean, unlike the ragged wounds their claws usually made. "Impossible," whispered Warriorek, his yellow eyes wide with disbelief. Park Minho did not give them time to recover from their surprise. He spoke quickly to his team in their human language, and the 6 humans immediately moved to new positions. They did not run in panic like prey animals. Instead, they moved with purpose, each human taking cover behind the metal walls and equipment. Commander Velkov watched through the helmet cameras from his ship, his claws digging deep scratches into his command chair. "What kind of weapons are those?" he demanded. "The projectiles appear to be solid metal, Commander," his weapons officer replied nervously. "They travel at extremely high velocity. Metal projectiles?" Velkov snarled. "Primitive kinetic weapons should not be able to penetrate Valkyrie armor." But they could, and they did. As the remaining warriors charged forward with their traditional battle roar, more humans opened fire. The sound of their weapons was sharp and constant. Filling the corridor with deadly metal projectiles, Warrior Zeth leaped high into the air, using his enhanced leg muscles to bound off the corridor walls. This move had worked against every enemy he had ever faced. In mid-jump, 3 projectiles struck him in the chest, abdomen, and head. He crashed to the floor and did not move again. They are not aiming for glory strikes, observed Communications Officer Leah Sojin from her position behind a control panel. She spoke quietly into her communication device. They target center mass for maximum damage, Warrior Cax tried to use his claws to deflect the incoming projectiles, a technique that worked well against energy weapons. The metal bullets tore through his natural weapons and continued into his body. He fell screaming, clutching the stumps where his claws had been. The humans did not celebrate these victories or taunt their enemies. They simply continued firing with mechanical precision, treating the battle like a job that needed to be completed efficiently. Engineering Officer Yoon Dae-ho had been moving through the ship's maintenance tunnels during the fight. Now he appeared behind the Valkyrie warriors, sealing blast doors and cutting off their escape route. The Valkyrie found themselves trapped in a corridor that had become a killing zone. "Retreat to the shuttle," ordered Warrior Nex, the highest-ranking survivor. "We must regroup and plan a proper assault." But when they turned to run, they discovered that their escape path was blocked. The humans had somehow sealed the doors without them noticing. The corridor behind them was now a dead end. Park Min-ho spoke again in human language. The other humans nodded and changed their firing pattern. Instead of trying to kill the remaining Valkyrie quickly, they began targeting specific body parts. Legs to prevent movement, arms to eliminate claws. Carefully placed shots that disabled rather than killed. "They are hunting us," Warrior Vel said in horror, "like we hunt lesser creatures." This realization was almost more terrifying than death itself. The Valkyrie had always been the hunters, never the prey. Every instinct they possessed was built around the idea of their own superiority. Now they crouched behind inadequate cover while smaller. Weaker creatures stalked them through their own ship. Commander Velkoth could hear the fear in his warriors' voices through the communication link. These were elite fighters who had never known defeat, now reduced to cowering animals. "Use your training," he commanded. "Remember your combat techniques." But Valkyrie combat techniques were designed for individual glory and face-to-face challenges. They had no experience with coordinated team tactics or defensive warfare. Each warrior had always fought for personal honor, competing with his comrades. As much as fighting the enemy, the humans showed no such division. When one human needed to reload his weapon, another immediately provided covering fire. When Communications Officer Lee Soo-jin spotted a Valkyrie trying to flank them, she warned Park Min-ho instantly. Every human action supported the others, creating a fighting force that was far more effective than the sum of its parts. Warrior Vex attempted the ancient Valkyrie challenge ritual, stepping into the open and roaring a demand for single combat. It was the most honorable way to fight, and no civilized species had ever refused such a challenge. Park Min-ho shot him in the knee without hesitation. As Vex fell, clutching his wounded leg, two more humans moved to better positions while the Valkyrie was distracted by his pain. "They have no honor," gasped Warrior Vek. "They fight like cowards." But even as he said it, Vek began to understand that this was not cowardice. The humans were not afraid to fight. They simply fought to win, rather than to prove their individual strength. Every action was calculated to achieve victory with minimum risk to their own people. Engineering Officer Yoon Dae-ho's voice came through the ship's communication system, speaking in accented galactic standard. "Attention Valkyrie warriors. You are now trapped in Section 7 of our vessel. Surrender and you will be treated according to the Federation's rules for prisoners of war." The concept of surrender was almost unknown to Valkyrie culture. Warriors died in battle or achieved victory. There was no middle ground, no acceptable alternative to total domination. "Never," snarled Warrior Nex. "We are Valkyrie, we do not yield to inferior species." Yoon Dae-ho's reply was calm and matter-of-fact. "Then you will die in Section 7 of our vessel." The human engineer began manipulating the ship's systems. Lights dimmed and brightened in patterns that confused Valkyrie vision. Air circulation changed, creating drafts that masked the sounds of human movement. Even the gravity fluctuated slightly, just enough to throw off Valkyrie balance without affecting the humans who knew what to expect. They are turning their own ship into a weapon, Velkoth realized with growing horror. They know every system, every advantage. One by one, the remaining Valkyrie warriors fell. Some died quickly from precise shots to vital organs. Others were wounded and captured when they could no longer fight effectively. None achieved the glorious death in battle that their culture demanded. The last warrior, Thek, found himself alone in the corridor with 6 human weapons pointed at him. His claws were broken, his armor was cracked, and green Valkyrie blood ran from multiple wounds. "Surrender?" Park Minho said simply. Thek looked around at the bodies of his comrades, at the efficient human soldiers who had defeated the finest warriors in the galaxy. For the first time in Valkyrie history, an elite warrior dropped his weapons and raised his hands in defeat. The silence that followed was deafening. Commander Velkoth stared at the view screen in complete disbelief. 12 elite Valkyrie warriors had been defeated by 6 humans in less than 10 minutes. It was impossible. It went against everything the Valkyrie knew about warfare, about strength, about the natural order of the galaxy, but the evidence was undeniable. The humans had won. Commander Velkoth's breathing was heavy and ragged as he stared at the silent communication channel. For the first time in his military career, he had lost an entire boarding party without inflicting a single casualty on the enemy. The shame burned in his chest like acid. "Commander," his communications officer said nervously, "Fleet Command is requesting a status report." Velkoth's claws flexed involuntarily. How could he explain this disaster to his superiors? How could he tell them that 12 elite warriors had been defeated by 6 small aliens with primitive weapons? "Tell them we have encountered unexpected resistance," he said finally. "Request immediate reinforcements. How many ships, Commander?" Velkoth looked at the human vessel on his view screen. It was still there, still calm, showing no signs of panic or preparation for escape. The confidence of these creatures was somehow more disturbing than their fighting ability. "All available ships in the sector," he ordered. "Send the emergency code. Maximum priority." Within an hour, Valkyrie warships began appearing throughout the system. First came the heavy cruiser Bloodfang, then the destroyers Night Hunter and Bone Crusher. Soon, 50 of the most powerful vessels in the Valkyrie fleet surrounded the single human ship. Each ship was a masterpiece of intimidation, designed to look like a massive predator floating through space. Their hulls were black metal covered, with spikes and blade-like projections. Energy weapons glowed like angry eyes along their sides. Any civilized species would have surrendered immediately at the sight of such overwhelming force. The human ship did. Nothing. Dr. Seo Youngmi knelt beside the body of Lieutenant Gorvex in the New Soul's medical bay. The Valkyrie prisoner, Warrior Thek, sat nearby under guard, watching her work with curious eyes. "Fascinating bone structure," she murmured, making notes on her medical tablet. "Enhanced muscle density, reinforced skeletal system, modified nervous system for faster reflexes." Thek shifted uncomfortably in his restraints. "You study us like specimens." "I am trying to understand your species," Dr. Seo replied calmly. "Your people are built for individual combat, aren't they? Everything about your evolution focused on making each warrior as deadly as possible." "We are the apex predators of the galaxy," Thek said with what remained of his pride. "No species has ever challenged Valkyrie supremacy." Dr. Seo looked up from her examination. "That explains a lot. Your entire civilization is based on the idea that the strongest individual wins. You've never had to develop cooperative tactics, because you've never needed them." "Cooperation is for the weak," Thek snarled. "Only cowards hide behind others." "Is that what you think we did?" Dr. Seo asked. "Hide behind others?" Thek was quiet for a moment, remembering the efficient way the humans had worked together. "Your warriors fought as one creature with many bodies. It was ... natural." On the bridge of the New Soul, Captain Kim Taeyeon studied the growing fleet of Valkyrie ships through the view screen. Science Officer Cho Yunji worked at her station, running detailed scans of each new arrival. "Captain, I'm detecting significant variations in their ship designs," Cho Yunji reported. Each vessel appears to be unique, customized for individual commanders. No standardization? Kim Tae-yeon asked. None that I can see. It's as if each captain designed his own ship to reflect his personal fighting style. Communications Officer Lee Sujin looked up from her console. Captain, I'm intercepting Valkyrie communications. They're arguing about who should have the honor of destroying us first. Kim Tae-yeon raised an eyebrow. They're arguing, with 50 ships surrounding us? Yes, sir. Each commander wants to claim personal victory. They can't agree on a unified battle plan. The captain turned to his tactical officer. What's our status, Namji-woo? Namji-woo checked his displays. All systems operational? Defensive measures are ready? But Captain, we're facing 50 warships. Even with our advantages, the odds are not good. Perhaps, Kim Tae-yeon said thoughtfully. But remember what Dr. Seo discovered about their psychology. They're not thinking of this as 50 ships against one. They're thinking of it as 50 individual duels happening at the same time. Engineering Officer Yoon Dae-ho's voice came through the communication system from the engine room. Captain, I've been analyzing their formation. They're positioning themselves for single combat engagements, not coordinated fleet action. Excellent observation. Can you exploit that? Already working on it, sir. I'm preparing some surprises that should work well against opponents who fight individually. Commander Velkoth finally opened a channel to the human ship. His voice was filled with the authority of absolute power. Human vessel, you are now surrounded by the full might of the Valkyrie Imperial Fleet. You have one final chance to surrender before we demonstrate why the galaxy fears our name. Captain Kim Tae-yeon's calm voice replied immediately. Commander Velkoth, we have no desire for conflict. However, we will defend ourselves if attacked. Defend yourselves? Velkoth laughed harshly. Against 50 warships? You are either insane or incredibly stupid. Perhaps we are both, Kim Tae-yeon replied. But we are also still here. The comment stung because it was true. Despite everything the Valkyrie had thrown at them, the humans remained calm and confident. Velkoth could not understand where this confidence came from. Fleet Admiral Corthex demands to know why you have not already destroyed these creatures. His communications officer reported nervously. Velkoth's superior had arrived on the massive battleship Death's Shadow, a vessel so large it could destroy planets. The fleet admiral was known for his short temper and his tendency to execute subordinates who disappointed him. Tell the fleet admiral that the humans have unusual capabilities, Velkoth replied carefully. They may require special tactics. Special tactics for 6 primitives in a survey ship? Came Corthex's angry response. You have become soft, Velkoth. Stand aside and watch how real warriors handle this situation. The Death's Shadow moved into position directly in front of the human vessel. Its massive weapons began charging, energy building to levels that could vaporize a small moon. Human ship, Fleet Admiral Corthex broadcast on all frequencies. I am Fleet Admiral Corthex of the Valkyrie Imperial Navy. You will surrender immediately, or I will erase you from existence. Captain Kim Tae-yeon's response was polite but firm. Fleet Admiral, we cannot surrender. However, we are prepared to defend ourselves. Corthex's laughter echoed through space. Defend yourselves against the Death's Shadow? You truly are insane. On the New Sol, pilot Jin Hyok was making final adjustments to the ship's maneuvering systems. Captain, all pilots are ready. Evasive pattern Omega is locked in. Communications, are you tracking all 50 ships? Kim Tae-yeon asked. Lee Soo-jin nodded. Yes, sir. I've identified the command frequencies for each vessel. Their encryption is surprisingly simple. Engineering, what's the status on our special preparations? Yoon Dae-ho's voice was confident. All systems are ready, Captain. The Valkyrie are about to learn something new about human warfare. Fleet Admiral Corthex raised his clawed hand, preparing to give the order to fire. Around him, 49 other Valkyrie commanders waited for their chance at individual glory. None of them understood that they were about to face an enemy that had spent millions of years learning to hunt in packs, to coordinate as a group, and To turn the strength of many into a weapon against the few, the humans had evolved as persistence hunters, who could chase prey for days across vast distances. They had developed language and complex social structures specifically to coordinate group activities. Everything about their species was designed for cooperative action. The Valkyrie, despite their individual strength and speed, had never encountered anything like it. "Fire!" Fleet Admiral Cortex commanded. The Death's Shadow's main weapons discharged, sending a stream of destructive energy toward the human ship, but the new soul was no longer there. The massive energy beam from the Death's Shadow struck empty space where the new soul had been only seconds before. Fleet Admiral Cortex stared at his viewscreen in confusion as his sensors tried to locate the vanished human ship. "Where did they go?" he roared at his crew. "Unknown, Fleet Admiral," his sensor officer replied nervously. "They simply disappeared from our screens." What the Valkyrie did not understand was that pilot Jin Hyok had used an emergency burn at the exact moment their weapons fired. The human ship had dropped below the plane of battle, using the asteroid field as cover while the Valkyrie fleet searched the wrong area of space. "Spread out and find them," Cortex ordered. "They cannot hide forever." This was exactly what Captain Kim Tae-yun had hoped would happen. The Valkyrie fleet began to break formation as each commander sought individual glory by being the first to locate the humans. What had been a coordinated wall of 50 ships became 50 separate hunters scattered across the system. "Phase 1 complete," Kim Tae-yun said quietly to his crew. "They have taken the bait." Communications Officer Lee Soo-jin was monitoring Valkyrie transmissions from her station. "Captain, they're arguing again. Each ship wants to claim the victory. For destroying us. Perfect. Nam Ji-woo, select our first target." Tactical Officer Nam Ji-woo studied the scattered Valkyrie ships on his display. "The destroyer Night Hunter has moved furthest from the fleet. Commander Vex appears to be the most aggressive of their captains. Then Commander Vex will be our first lesson to the galaxy." Kim Tae-yun decided. Engineering Officer Yoon Dae-ho had been busy during their brief hiding period. Using the ship's fabrication systems, he had created dozens of small devices that were now drifting invisibly through the battle zone. They looked like space debris, but each one contained a powerful explosive charge and a simple guidance system. "Mines are in position," Yoon Dae-ho reported. "The Valkyrie sensors cannot detect them among the asteroid fragments." The new soul emerged from behind a large asteroid, directly behind the isolated Night Hunter. Pilot Jin Hyok brought them in close before the Valkyrie crew could react. "Commander." Vex spun his ship around to face the humans, his weapons charging for what he expected would be a glorious single combat. This was the moment he had dreamed of. Since joining the Imperial Navy, a chance to prove his individual superiority against a worthy opponent. "Human cowards," he broadcast, "face me in honorable battle." Park Min-ho, now serving as the ship's gunner, targeted the Night Hunter's weapon systems with surgical precision. Instead of trying to destroy the entire ship, he disabled its ability to fight back with carefully placed shots. "Impossible," Vex gasped as his weapons went offline. "You should be trying to kill me, not cripple my ship." "We do not seek glory," Kim Tae-yun replied over the communication channel. "We seek victory." The Night Hunter, helpless and drifting, became the first piece in humanity's larger strategy. The humans did not destroy it. Instead, they left it alive as bait. "All ships, converge on the Night Hunter," Fleet Admiral Cortex ordered when he saw Vex's predicament. "Rescue our comrade." But the Valkyrie ships did not coordinate their approach. Each commander wanted to be the hero who saved Vex and destroyed the humans. They raced toward the disabled destroyer from different directions, competing with each other as much as hunting their target. This was exactly what the humans had planned. As the first Valkyrie ships entered the area around the Night Hunter, Yoon Dae-ho's hidden mines began to activate. The explosions looked random to the Valkyrie, like accidents or equipment failures. But each blast was precisely timed to drive the alien ships into specific positions. "They are hurting us," Commander Valkoth realized with growing horror. "Like, we heard prey animals during the great hunts." The comparison was accurate. The humans were using the same tactics that Earth's ancestors had used to hunt massive creatures across ancient plains. Drive the prey into a confined area, separate individuals from the herd, then attack the isolated targets. Science Officer Cho Yunji was tracking every Valkyrie ship from her station. Captain, 17 ships are now in the kill zone. Their formation is exactly what we predicted. Execute Phase 2. Kim Tae-yun ordered. The new soul began moving through the scattered Valkyrie fleet in a pattern that seemed random but was actually carefully planned. They would appear behind one ship, disable its weapons, then vanish before reinforcements could arrive. Each attack lasted only minutes, but left another Valkyrie vessel helpless. The key was that humans thought of the entire fleet as a single organism that could be systematically dismantled. The Valkyrie still thought of it as individual ships seeking personal victory. Commander Thak is requesting immediate assistance, reported Corthex's communications officer. His engines have been disabled. Send the Bloodfang to help him, Corthex ordered. But when the Bloodfang arrived, they found Commander Thak's ship drifting in a field of small explosions. As they moved to help, more mines detonated around them, forcing them into a defensive position. The humans had not just disabled Thak's ship, they had turned it into a trap. Admiral, Velkoth's voice came through the fleet communication channel. I believe we are facing a new form of warfare. These humans do not fight for honor or glory. They fight only to win. Nonsense, Corthex snarled. All intelligent species understand the principles of combat. Find that ship and destroy it. But finding the new soul was becoming increasingly difficult. Pilot Jin Hyok was using every piece of debris, every asteroid, every shadow to hide their approach. The humans never stayed in one place long enough for the Valkyrie to coordinate an attack. More importantly, they were learning from each encounter. Communications Officer Lee Soo-jin was recording every Valkyrie tactic, every weapon signature, every command frequency. The humans were gathering intelligence that made each subsequent attack more effective. 18 ships disabled, Nam Ji-woo reported. No Valkyrie casualties, but half their fleet is now unable to fight effectively. This was perhaps the most disturbing aspect of human warfare from the Valkyrie perspective. These aliens were not trying to kill their enemies. Instead, they were methodically removing their ability to resist, treating warfare like a job that needed to be completed efficiently. Fleet Admiral Corthex finally began to understand what he was facing. All ships return to defensive formation around the Death's Shadow. We will make them come to us. But it was too late. The human ship had already achieved its objective. Half the Valkyrie fleet was disabled, scattered, and demoralized. The survivors were no longer thinking about individual glory. They were thinking about survival. Captain Kim Tae-yun looked at the tactical display showing the retreating Valkyrie ships. Excellent work, everyone. Phase 3 begins now. The hunt was far from over. The news traveled faster than the speed of light across the galaxy's communication networks. In bars, trading stations, and government halls, the impossible reports were whispered in dozens of languages. The Valkyrie Imperial Fleet, terror of 3 sectors, had been defeated by a single human ship on the water world of Aquanus. The amphibious Keth people gathered around their news displays in shocked silence. For 200 years, they had paid tribute to the Valkyrie Empire to avoid destruction. Now they watched recordings of Valkyrie ships fleeing from creatures they had never heard of before. The humans disabled 37 ships without destroying a single one, reported their news anchor, her gills flapping with excitement. This suggests a completely different approach to warfare than we have ever seen. Similar scenes played out across hundreds of worlds. Species that had lived in fear of Valkyrie raids suddenly saw hope. Others, particularly those with their own military ambitions, began to worry about what these new humans might do next. In the emergency council chamber of the Valkyrie homeworld, Fleet Admiral Corthex stood before a tribunal of the Empire's highest commanders. His scarred hide bore the marks of his recent humiliation. and his yellow eyes showed the haunted look of a predator who had discovered he was actually prey. Explain to us how 50 warships failed to destroy 6 aliens in a survey vessel, demanded High Commander Zektoth, her voice like grinding metal. Corthex's claws clicked nervously against the metal floor. High Commander, these humans fight unlike any species we have encountered. They do not seek individual glory or honor in combat. They work together as a single unit with frightening efficiency. You speak of aliens as if they were superior to Valkyrie warriors, Zektoth snarled. This is either cowardice or incompetence. High Commander, with respect, it is neither, Corthex replied carefully. I have reviewed the battle recordings. These humans have developed warfare as a science rather than an art. Every action supports multiple objectives. Every retreat leads to a better attack position. High Commander Zektoth studied the battle footage on the chamber's main display. She watched human tactics that seemed almost alien in their coordination and efficiency. They turned our own strength against us, she admitted reluctantly. Our individual ship commanders competed with each other instead of focusing on the enemy. Meanwhile, on the New Sol, Dr. Seo Youngni was conducting her final interview with Warrior Thek before his release. The Valkyrie prisoner had been surprisingly cooperative, perhaps because the humans had treated him with more respect than he had ever received from his own officers. Your species evolved as persistence hunters, Thek observed. You chase prey across vast distances until it collapses from exhaustion. That is what you did to our fleet. Double quotes. Dr. S.O. nodded. Our ancestors hunted animals much larger and stronger than themselves. We learned to work together because we had to. Individual humans are not particularly dangerous, but groups of humans are the most effective predators our planet ever produced. And now you bring this ability to space, Thek said quietly. The galaxy is not prepared for cooperative hunters. We hope it will not be necessary to hunt, Dr. Seo replied. We prefer to explore and learn, but we will defend ourselves if threatened. Across the galaxy, military leaders were reaching the same conclusion that Dr. Seo had articulated. The Mantis Collective, a hive-minded species that controlled 4 star systems, called an emergency session of their queens. These humans demonstrate group coordination that rivals our own, Queen Zaranine buzzed to her sisters. But they achieve it through choice rather than genetic programming. This makes them potentially more dangerous than our own warriors. The Mechanical Nexus Empire, composed of artificial intelligences that had overthrown their organic creators, calculated the implications of human tactical doctrine with cold precision. Analysis complete, announced Central Processing Unit Prime. Human cooperation appears to be voluntary but absolute. This suggests they can adapt their tactics faster than species with fixed behavioral patterns. Conclusion? Asked Secondary Processing Unit Alpha. These humans represent a new evolutionary approach to warfare. We should study them carefully before deciding whether they are potential allies or threats to be eliminated. On the Terran Federation capital world of New Terra, Admiral Park Seonghwa read Captain Kim Tae-yun's battle report with growing concern. The encounter with the Valkyrie had revealed both humanity's strengths and the dangerous nature of galactic politics. 37 disabled ships, 13 retreated intact, Admiral Park summarized to his staff. 0 Valkyrie casualties, 0 human casualties. Perfect execution of non-lethal force. The psychological impact may be more important than the tactical victory, observed Colonel Yoon Minji, the Federation's chief military psychologist. We have shattered the Valkyrie reputation for invincibility without making ourselves appear bloodthirsty. That was the intention, Admiral Park replied. But we need to prepare for the consequences. Other species will want to test us now. Some will seek alliance, others will view us as a threat to be eliminated. His prediction was already coming true. The arthropod swarmlords, who controlled the galaxy's largest military force, had begun mobilizing their fleets toward human space. Unlike the Valkyrie, they were collective thinkers who understood the danger posed by another cooperative species. These humans must be destroyed before they can spread their influence. declared Swarm Lord Prime, his compound eyes reflecting. The light of 1,000 stars. We cannot allow another species to master coordinated warfare, but not all galactic powers saw humanity as a threat. The Peaceful Harmony Coalition, composed of 7 species dedicated to diplomatic solutions, sent immediate messages offering friendship and alliance. The humans have demonstrated that it is possible to achieve military victory without wholesale slaughter, announced Speaker Vel 9 of the Coalition Council. This suggests they may be natural allies in our quest for galactic peace. The commercial interests of the galaxy were also taking notice. The Trade Consortium, a loose alliance of merchant species, saw opportunity in humanity's demonstrated capabilities. Species that can coordinate complex military operations can probably coordinate complex commercial operations, noted Trade Prince Keck 7. We should establish trading relationships immediately. On a remote observation station at the edge of Valkyrie space, an ancient species known only as the Watchers recorded everything with instruments beyond current galactic understanding. They had observed the rise and fall of civilizations for millions of years, and they recognized something significant in humanity's arrival. The balance shifts, one Watcher intoned to its companion. A new variable enters the equation. Will they bring order or chaos? Asked the second Watcher. Perhaps both, came the reply, as all truly influential species do. Back on the New Sol, Captain Kim Tae-yun stood on his bridge, looking out at the stars through the main view screen. The ship was finally continuing its original mission of peaceful exploration, but he knew their lives had changed forever. Captain, Communications Officer Lee Sojin called out, we are receiving messages from 47 different species requesting diplomatic contact. 47? Kim Tae-yun raised an eyebrow. Some offering alliance, some requesting military assistance against the Valkyrie, some warning us to stay out of their territory, she continued, and one species called the Harmony Coalition offering to mediate peaceful first contact with the rest of the galaxy. Kim Tae-yun nodded thoughtfully. Send a message to Federation Command. Tell them we will need diplomats out here very soon. It appears humanity has been noticed. Behind them, the Valkyrie Empire was beginning to crumble as subject species rebelled against their weakened oppressors. The galaxy was changing, and everyone knew that the arrival of humanity was just the beginning. 6 months after the battle that changed everything, the galaxy looked completely different. The Valkyrie Empire had shattered into dozens of smaller territories as former subjects declared independence or formed new alliances. The ripple effects of humanity's victory continued to spread across civilized space. Admiral Kim Tae-yun, promoted from his position as ship captain, stood on the bridge of the new Federation flagship Harmony. Through the view screen, he could see representatives from 30 different species gathering at the newly constructed Galactic Peace Station. Admiral, the Keth delegation has arrived, reported Communications Officer Lee Sojin, who had also been promoted after her excellent service during the Valkyrie encounter. They are requesting permission to present you with their highest honor for liberating their worlds. Kim Tae-yun sighed quietly. Liberation had never been their goal, but many species saw humanity's actions that way. The Keth had stopped paying tribute to the Valkyrie Empire the day after news of the battle reached their homeworld. Schedule a meeting with their ambassador, he replied, but remind them that we are here as peacekeepers, not conquerors. Engineering. Officer Yoon Daeho's voice came through the ship's communication system. Admiral, we have another request for tactical training from the Aquinas Defense Force that makes 15 species this month asking us to teach them human military doctrine. This had become a persistent problem. Every species that had suffered under Valkyrie oppression now wanted to learn human warfare tactics. They did not understand that those tactics could not be separated from human psychology and social development. Send them the standard response? Kim Tae-yun ordered. We will teach defensive strategies, but we cannot teach cooperation to species that have not evolved for it. The truth was that most alien species found human tactics impossible to implement. Their soldiers could memorize the procedures, but They lacked the instinctive cooperation that made those procedures effective. Individual excellence was still their primary focus on the former Valkyrie capital world. Now calling itself New Prosperity, a remarkable transformation was taking place. Former Commander Velkoth walked through the rebuilt city streets alongside human anthropologist Lim Hajin, discussing the changes their species was attempting to make. "It is difficult to abandon everything we once believed," Velkoth admitted. "For thousands of years, individual strength was the only virtue that mattered to our people. Now we must learn to value the group above the self." Lim Hajin nodded sympathetically. Change is never easy, especially when it challenges fundamental beliefs. But your people are making progress. Indeed, young Valkyrie were beginning to embrace concepts their parents had never imagined. They formed study groups instead of competing alone. They shared resources instead of hoarding them. Some even practiced team sports, an idea that would have been considered madness in the old empire. "The human method is not natural for us," Velkoth continued, "but we see its effectiveness. Those who adapt will survive and prosper. Those who cling to the old ways will be left behind." Not everyone was adapting successfully. In the outer regions of former Valkyrie space, warlords still tried to maintain the old system of individual dominance. These holdouts found themselves increasingly isolated as their neighbors embraced cooperative approaches to governance and defense. Dr. Seo Youngmi had established a research station on New Prosperity, studying the social changes taking place among former Valkyrie populations. Her work was being watched carefully by sociologists across the galaxy. "The transformation is unprecedented," she reported to the Federation Science Council. "An entire species is attempting to change its fundamental social structure within a single generation. Some communities are succeeding remarkably well." Her reports included footage of young Valkyrie working together on construction projects, their natural strength enhanced by human-inspired coordination techniques. Where their ancestors had competed to build the tallest individual monuments, these new Valkyrie built functional cities designed to serve entire populations, but humanity's influence was not universally welcome. The Swarm Lords had mobilized their vast fleets and were moving toward human space with obvious hostile intent. Unlike the Valkyrie, they understood cooperative warfare and viewed humanity as a direct threat to their dominance. "Analysis indicates the humans represent an existential challenge to our supremacy," declared Swarm Lord Prime to his assembled generals. "They must be eliminated before they can establish stronger alliances with other species." The Swarm Lord's approach to cooperation was different from humanity's. Where humans chose to work together, the Swarm Lords were genetically programmed for collective action. They saw humanity's voluntary cooperation as dangerous because it could spread to other species. Admiral Park Seonghwa, now commanding the entire Federation fleet, studied intelligence reports about the approaching Swarm Lord armada. Unlike the chaotic Valkyrie fleet, this enemy would be disciplined and coordinated. "They have over 200 ships moving in perfect formation," he reported to the Federation Council. "This will not be like our encounter with the Valkyrie. The Swarm Lords understand team tactics." "Can we defend against them?" asked President Chun Min-jung. "We can try," Admiral Park replied honestly. "But we will need allies, many allies." The call for assistance went out across the galaxy, and the response was immediate. Species that had been enemies for centuries put aside, their differences to stand with humanity against the Swarm Lord threat. The Keth provided their advanced underwater cities as refugee centers. The Harmony Coalition offered their diplomatic networks to coordinate the defense. Even former Valkyrie worlds contributed ships and warriors trained in the new cooperative methods. "I never expected to fight beside humans," admitted Captain Deck, the former Valkyrie warrior who had surrendered to Park Min-ho months earlier. He now commanded a mixed crew of Valkyrie and human soldiers aboard the joint defense vessel Unity. 6 months ago, I would not have expected to fight beside Valkyrie," replied his human co-captain, Lieutenant Commander Park Jisoo, "but here we are." The final confrontation took place in the neutral space between the galaxy's major spiral arms. 200 swarm lord ships faced an alliance fleet of equal size, representing 23 different species united under human tactical coordination. The battle lasted for 18 hours and ended with the complete withdrawal of the swarm lord fleet. Not because they were defeated, but because they realized that humanity had done something unprecedented in galactic history. They had taught cooperation to species that had never evolved for it. The humans have created a new form of warfare, Swarm Lord Prime reported to his superiors. They have made their weakness into a strength that can be shared with others. We cannot compete with an entire galaxy working together. 1 year after first contact, Dr. Seo Youngmi stood before the newly formed Galactic Cooperation Council, presenting her final report on humanity's impact on galactic civilization. The arrival of humanity has fundamentally changed how species interact with each other, she concluded. We have demonstrated that cooperation is not just a survival strategy, but a path to prosperity that benefits everyone involved. The council chamber was filled with representatives from over 100 species, many of whom had been enemies just months before. They sat together, worked together, and planned together in ways that would have been impossible before humanity showed them what cooperation could achieve. Admiral Kim Tae-yun, now serving as humanity's representative to the council, stood to address the assembly. We did not come to the galaxy seeking dominance or conquest, he said simply. We came seeking knowledge and friendship. We are pleased to have found both. In the months that followed, the changes continued to spread. Trade flourished between former enemies. Scientific discoveries were shared freely. Even warfare, when it occurred, was conducted with rules designed to minimize casualties and preserve the possibility of future cooperation. The Valkyrie had been right about one thing: humanity had become the apex predators of the galaxy. But they had achieved this position not through strength or cunning, but by teaching others that the real power in the universe came from working together toward common goals. The galaxy had learned the simple, but revolutionary truth: in a universe full of individuals, those who could truly cooperate would always triumph over those who could not. And for the first time in galactic history, everyone was working together to ensure that triumph belonged to all civilized species, not just the strongest.